I don't know how many people have never joined before, but as a quick, there's a few. So as a quick summary background, the Royal Berks has put on the new hospital programme, which is the government's programme to build 40 hospitals by 2030, and we were put on it in 2019. And there are 3 key stages to that in terms of securing funding, which is three key stages to the business case, which is the strategic outline case, which is making your case for change. We submitted that in December 2020. And then there's an outline business case stage, which goes into a lot of detail around the options that we have for building a new hospital. And we're in the middle of that stage now, we're in that process now. And then there's the full business case stage, which is where we've decided on a preferred option in the outline business case. So we've decided on what kind of hospital, how much it's going to cost to build, how much it's going to cost to run it, that it makes a good financial sense, that it's good for the population. We've landed on a preferred option, and then we go out to contract for the services to build that new hospital. And we have to put together a full business case for that. So we'll go out to tender, and there'll be lots of different contracts that have to be taken out, and we go out to competition to get the hospital built. And so that's the full business case stage. But on the new hospital programme, the desire is that because there's 40 new hospitals being built in a relatively short space of time, the idea is that we could make economies of scale, that we make better value by joining up. So if we all have the same standards in terms of room sizes and air ventilation and all of those kinds of things. So why don't we create standardized designs that we can all use by coming together and designing things in that way? So instead of us paying for designers or architects or all of that to be designing that separately 40 times, we all come together and agree on a few designs that would be good in terms of maximizing those standards. And then we can get a better deal with the market to say, right, we know that we're going to have 40 hospitals. We're going to go out and see what kind of deals we can make to when we buy at scale. And then we can also schedule them a bit in terms of if we all went out looking for the same kits at the same time, then we would drive the prices up, we would jam the market. People who expected to be building up, in a particular year wouldn't be able to proceed because it wasn't coordinated and organised. So there's lots of reasons why there's a lot of benefits to a new hospital programme like this. But as you can imagine, it's also huge in terms of trying to get it organised. And over the last 2 years really, what the new hospital programme team have been doing is building that business case to get the funding for all of the hospitals to proceed with building. So we've already had funding for because it's in cohorts 1 to 4 at the moment. So there's some hospitals that have gone sooner, and you see last year Liverpool Hospital, for example, opened, and I'll come back and touch on that a bit later on. So some hospitals have started to open, and some money has been released for those. We're in cohort 4, and what we are, and we're learning from those earlier cohorts, and cohort 4 are what you call full adopters. So it is expected that we will benefit from the new hospital design, the standardized design, the centralized way of doing things, because we'll learn from the earlier cohorts, plus we'll be working on all of those modules going forward. So we're in cohort 4, which means that we are scheduled for construction between 2025 and 2030, so anywhere in that window. So we submitted in our strategic outline case, we submitted 3 options that we could take forward. 2 of them were to redevelop on our current site in a phased way redevelopment, refurbishment of some, and building new bits and some, and you'll see that on our website. We also had a brand new hospital on a brand new site as an option. And I guess we thought that and the costs vary from on-site development was 750 million to 1 billion, and then a brand new hospital on a new site was 1.3 billion. That was costs a couple of years ago. So those are the range of costs for a new hospital. So you'd imagine, and what we hope is that some of those are brought down by applying the new way of doing it. So those costs are building it in the way we've always built it, but coming up, I think we can see quite a bit of that coming down, hopefully, in the new standardized way of doing it. So we had 3 options going forward, and we've been waiting for the next phase, which is the new hospital saying they've been making a case to the Treasury, so the Department of Health have been making that case to Treasury and Number 10, and so Treasury and Number 10 and the Department of Health have now reached an agreement on funding, which I'll come to in a bit. So it's been quite hard to make all those to make the business case. So we're having to submit information, submit options, say if we built here, this is how much it would cost, this is how long it would last. And as you can imagine, that's been done 40 times. Hospitals much bigger than us. Some of them are more complex, some of them are smaller. So it's taken a while for them to bring that business case together and come to a stage where we've got multiple government departments agreeing on a way forward. So that's kind of a bit of context, and we've got a bit of we've been building our program team ready to mobilize and continue to develop our business cases over the last year to a year and a half. We've been working on things like how can we do things differently? How can we make care closer to home, use digital technologies, make sure that we can achieve net zero carbon targets. And so working on those things that are going to be important for us in determining our build. So we haven't sort of been waiting until we've been doing stuff as and on our website you can hopefully you can see that. Because what we're also trying to do in our engagement is try and let people see exactly what we're doing. A meeting might seem boring to us, but actually making sure that you guys or anybody can see what we're doing. You know, the whole program is very complex, but if you take little chunks of it, people might say, well, I wouldn't mind being involved in that. Well, I've got experience in that. We've had people, and some on the call, engineers and architects who, you know, live locally and want to say, look, can I give you some advice on, you know, how this presentation looks, or can I come into this workshop? And we really do want this to be a collaborative exercise over the next few years. So go on the website, and there's lots of information about what we're doing, and we update that, you know, practically daily, but definitely weekly about what we're doing. So I've got a few slides just to give some updates, really, from the last time I think that we met. I don't know when that was, Lynn. It's probably 6 or 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe about 5 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So good start. It's the right screen.
Good.
So next slide, please. My glamorous assistant. So I'm going to talk tonight about the new hospital programme visit that we had. So we had a visit from the senior hospital programme team about 4 weeks ago now, maybe 5. So I'm going to talk a bit about that and some of the information that came from that visit. I'm going to talk about announcement on funding. It's known now as the infamous announcement on funding, because it's been due, and we think it's, you know, we've been told, oh, it's going to be tomorrow, and then it's not tomorrow, and then it's going to be on Monday, and it's not on Monday. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means, the announcement on funding. And then Hospital 2.0. So that's really technically that's called, you know, the hospital for the future. It's the next generation type of hospital. I'm going to talk about location because I think once I talk about the rest, you'll understand why that has become more pertinent. And new models, what I mean by that is new care models and the opportunity that a new hospital can bring to looking at how we might deliver things really differently locally. So next slide. So as I mentioned in March, the concept of Hospital 2.0, which I'll talk about in the next slide, has had approval, which is, you know, a credit to the new hospital program team, because that's not easy. It's really around the impact is more for new hospitals and less refurbishments and building hospitals for the longer term future. It's about a new way of building hospitals. So we will be in the first 40, and it is the first 40. So by the time, you know, we've developed and designed these new hospitals, the other hospitals who need new hospitals will hopefully be able to build hospitals quicker to a high standard and fit for a longer future. We're awaiting political announcements. So what that means is the Secretary of State for Health, Steve Barclay, has a few times had a few false starts around announcing it before we entered into a pre-election, what you call a pre-election period, which kind of has some restrictions on what can and can't be announced after a certain time leading up to the local elections. And it's all very complicated, but it does have an impact on what can be announced. And that was from the 13th of April. So nothing will happen before the May elections. And potentially it's not great to be announcing something that's a lot of investment when we've got a lot of industrial action going on as well. So I think that's his focus at the moment is the industrial action stuff, we're led to believe. So that's where we are with the announcement. And so do we know what's in the announcement? So the next slide. We don't know how much money, we don't know the details of the announcement. When the new hospital program team came to visit us, they did tell us that because they had been going to make the case for Hospital 2.0, but it was a more expensive case initially. It will deliver savings and it will be a better way of doing things over years, but it will require additional investment upfront. And money is tight, and there are all sorts of reasons why people might not secure that sort of initial funding. But we're led to believe that that's been agreed, and that for us, this is a positive message. So we were concerned about having to do a lot of refurbishment on the site rather than building new elements of the site, because money was going to be a real constricting factor. But Hospital 2.0, I'll just go through some of the elements of what that means. Firstly, it means single room occupancy. And this is one of the bigger impacts for us that it will have in terms of deciding where our location is. So single rooms, 100% single rooms is what the target is. There may be some flex on that for certain groups, but I think current policy is the target is 100%. So if you imagine we've got 700 of beds and they're in wards at the minute, just building the same number of beds is going to require a lot more space. So that's not taking into account any of the other services. Now, it may be that we move some services that we're currently running on the site somewhere else, and we have to look at that. But certainly in our site, which we all know is constrained, is landlocked, surrounded by conservation areas and residential and a main road, it will present some challenges. I think single rooms, personally, and looking at a huge amount of evidence there is around the benefits of single rooms, is very positive, and the decision was made on a lot of evidence that was presented to clinical groups at a national level. We're seeing some of the good benefits coming out from Liverpool Hospital, where they've seen a huge amount of a reduction in infections and infection transmission around the hospital. And they've also seen a reduction in the amount of time people stay in hospital. So what we call the length of stay has reduced, because people are recovering quicker because they're getting a decent night's sleep. They're getting some rest. So, you know, we're watching to see what other data is coming out from that. But, you know, some really sort of promising things around single rooms is coming. There is some evidence. I'll come back to questions in a bit. So there is some evidence, a paper, and we were just told today that the paper that that has all this evidence that the decision was made on is going to be circulated shortly. So we'll put that on our website and circulate it to our stakeholders, just to show you the evidence that that's been based on. And that's for, you know, it gives a lot of benefits for a number of groups. Digital, so what we mean by digital is fully digitally enabled. So how, you know, things like reducing infection is only possible if, for example, if your temperature starts to rise, an alarm goes off and lets people know that you know, there's a potential for you to have an infection, and so you can be isolated, you can be treated more quickly, and you can prevent that infection from spreading. That's just one example. You can be more efficient in terms of digital. So if you look at, let's just say, I don't know, changing the, it's a very simple example, but changing the towels in all bathrooms in a hospital, which you can imagine there's a lot. Currently, you may do that. You go in and you check and you replace, you check and replace. Digital would tell you when you've run out. So you don't have to go around the hospital and check all of them. You can just go and fill up the ones that are empty. That's, you know, using digital really cleverly to be more efficient in what we're doing. Wayfinding, people finding their way around the hospital is another benefit. So there's a whole list of those. Modern methods of construction. So that is where we're building off-site modular builds. We're building off-site and then bringing it in and on-site. The benefit of that is we can, once we've done our standardized design, I'll talk about that. So we've decided what the single rooms look like, what the wards should look like, and how they should be configured, what wards should be next to what wards is a different, you know, how it's all configured. One emergency, we might have 4 or 5 different types of emergency department, depending on the size of the building that you're fitting to where you need to put it. That can be ordered and built off-site. The conditions that you're not open to the elements, so the conditions in which you're building is much more controlled. And someone's let the dog in the room tonight is honestly, bear with me. So I'm not normally this bonkers. It's just a very strange night. Anyway, so so the benefits of that is that you can actually create lots of different factories in different places. So, you know, a part of this whole process of building at scale is actually generating markets and generating opportunities for people to create factories and to create specialisms in different parts of the country. And so you can put your order in for however many wards or rooms or whatever it is that you need to do to then be delivered when the hospital is ready for that build. So and there are lots of other benefits to modern methods of construction. So it's going to help with the scale of what it is that we have to do. Standardized designs, I've talked about a little bit of single rooms, but you know, there's more to the hospital than just the single rooms. You know, there's emergency departments, there's diagnostics, there's where things are situated. So how quickly people get around the hospital. You know, we know in our hospital that A&E and the ICU, the intensive care unit, are miles away from each other in where we are. So, and that causes a lot of problems in terms of transporting, in terms of access to staff, the time taken of staff to go backwards and forwards. So positioning of where departments go, that will all be teased out and worked through by experts around the country, and also by looking at what hospitals are doing now. And we've got some visits lined up, and I'll talk to you a bit at the end about how we can help you guys to join us in some of that learning. So I'll talk a bit about that a bit later on. So the industrialization section of that is, this is this huge multi-billion-pound investment in hospitals. How do we make sure, for example, that we can do this at scale, and that we can, the current supply can help us? But also for us in Reading, how do we make sure that if we know that in 5 years' time, 7 years' time, whenever it is, that we need certain elements of this program, we need certain skills, then we should be thinking about those now, so that we can build them locally, so that we can start to invest in our local economy, ready for this big investment coming to us. So there's a lot of work happening around that aspect of it, around, okay, so we have to build bigger markets for this. Let's make sure we try and build them here. And we need to skill up the market to make sure we're ready. Okay, so how can we do that? And technology, we're surrounded by, we're the tech valley, Thames Valley. Are there companies we should be engaging with? Now, we should also be thinking about innovation. So we've been talking to the university around some of that too, around testing innovative solutions, because this is an opportunity, a real opportunity to test something in one hospital that might be good for other hospitals to use. So industrialization, that's a chapter all on its own. And centralized elements, what that means is there are things that we're all doing that are the same. So our business cases, for example, a lot of those sections will be the same no matter what hospital you are. You could all write the benefits for most of your population. It will be the same. There'll be certain nuances locally, but it'll be the same for a lot of us. So why are we all, spending thousands and thousands on experts to write individual business cases for us? So there's things around also the procurement, the contracting, the stuff I talked about with the full business case. So when we go out to secure all of this, the kits and the bits for the hospital and the expertise, that because we've got buying power that is building at scale, that has to be done centrally and managed centrally. So that's kind of the key elements. And the on the right hand side there, it says a faster business case process. If any of you have been involved in business cases in the NHS, it takes years. It takes years to get through it. So generally for a new hospital, for a business case, it can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years if on a good year, and a lot longer on others. So where they're talking about dramatically reducing that time. Faster hospital build. So using modern methods of construction will help with faster hospital build, because you won't be restricted to the elements in terms of building on site, and there's a lot of evidence to show that that modular modern methods of construction can deliver faster build times. And so therefore the prize, I guess, is hospitals will be built using the highest standards, because all the expertise from around the country will be building this high standard hospital design, standardized design, and the hope is that it will take less time and will cost less. So the next slide, please. So after the announcement, which we're hoping will be sometime later in May, after the elections, which will give a bit more detail about what we can expect. And I'm not keeping anything from you. I honestly don't know what the detail of that announcement is, except that it feels like it's positive. I'll be gutted if it isn't now, after being told that all of these things. But we've had a couple of meetings since since the new hospital programme came 4 weeks ago as programme directors across the country, training us on what Hospital 2.0 looks like and what we might need to do in terms of planning around getting us ready to deliver this kind of hospital. So we'll have a one-to-one with the new hospital programme after the announcement to understand how much is the funding for us, what's the potential for our scheme. We'll work up a programme plan and a schedule. So some hospitals already have land that they're ready to go on. They've got planning permission. And so, you know, you'd imagine they'll be scheduled to go sooner rather than later. Who knows? But that's the idea, is that actually those that are ready to go and have had proper consultations and are a bit further in terms of some elements, they may be able to go sooner. It all depends. We will have to do a feasibility about whether we can build a new hospital on our current site or whether we need a new site, and I'll come to that in the next slide. So and then we contribute to a programme business case to Treasury in the autumn. So all of the 40 hospitals, well, it's less than that now, but certainly for cohort 4 it'll be 8, I think it's 18 hospitals, will provide detail that will allow them to say, right, Royal Berks is going to go in 2027, you know, Hampshire will go in 2028, etc., etc. So it will provide a bit of a scheduling. That's the idea. And then we will start delivering and delivering at pace. So next slide, please. So location, most people ask about. We don't know yet about the location. So we have to understand the feasibility on our current site. So we look at things like, what will our size requirements be? So some of that will be linked to the standards now that we have to adhere to, that are new hospital programme standards for Hospital 2.0, and what's the size that we've got left. Certainly, if it's going to be bigger, we have to look at building up. If we build up, what's the implications for well, the land, whether it can take the land, whether the build, and also the neighbours, our neighbours in terms of overlooking, planning permission. There's logistics, you know, basically delivering services on a construction site, which is essentially what we would be doing. It's not going to be easy because we'd have to knock down a building, to build a building, decant people. It's like what's the game Tetris, where you've move, you know, decant into one building, then move to another, move things around, all while you're trying to deliver your services on that site. So we would have to look at the logistics of that, and the ability of the land to build on it. So most of you will know and can see we've got some issues. Well, we had some issues on the weekend, which is separate in terms of the burst pipe, but we certainly have had issues with some sinkholes that we've discovered over the last year. So we're trying to understand a bit more about those, you know, what the issues are on our land. We're doing a whole site geo survey to understand the sinkholes, but you'll see some construction going on in the front where London Road is, where the old building is. On the left-hand side, we're filling a significant sinkhole underneath that building at the moment with concrete. So we have to understand the ability of the land for us to be able to build a hospital, a brand new full hospital to 2.0 standards on that land. And of course, consideration has to be around affordability, which is part of the business case, around the sale and the costs of the land, how that impacts on our decision. We have been looking at other sites. We've done an initial search, so it's very early stages, but the 2 sites that, and we use a criteria. So how close is it to, you know, the current hospital? How close is it to most of our population, which is in Reading? Transport issues will come into it. Infrastructure issues, as in, has it got the space as well? All of those things. There's a whole list of things that we searched. And at the moment, we've got 2 potential sites, but we are continuing to look One's in Thames Valley Park, which is not even a quarter of a mile away from where we are now. And the other one is Thames Valley Science Park, which is in Shinfield, up that way. So but more work has to be done in this area. So making sure that what would be needed to make these sites ready. So I think the one in the science park is land. So it will need things like all the infrastructure, electricity, the water, all of those kinds of things to go in there. Whereas I think Thames Valley Park already populated in terms of some of that infrastructure. Both of them have got issues in terms of transport, and so high on our priority list is making sure that we do not disadvantage anybody from being able to come to the site. So and that if there isn't current transport there, we would have to make sure that there is transport there for people who are using our hospital to get there. So that again, what does that look like? So more work to be done on that, and also we are continued to see if there are other sites. Next slide, please. So I'm just a little bit here on new care models. So there's a lot of evidence and work being done around different types, different ways in which we can deliver what we're delivering. So they're called some primary care and community hubs, or health and wellbeing hubs, for example, where lots of multidisciplinary teams can operate from, and also you can do day procedures. So a lot of operations at the moment are done on a day case basis. So, what could we build in that sort of less acute way, and could be much more of a hub, health and wellbeing hub. So we're looking at different types of facilities to see if we could do different sort of types of buildings that might work. So that's and we call it new care models, but there's things like step down facilities. So how do I describe that? So our hospital needs to demonstrate benefits like to the wider system, so to Oxfordshire and to Buckinghamshire, because we're working as part of that system as well. So if we have a new hospital in this area, how can we make sure it benefits those hospitals? So one example could be, and it's nowhere near definite, it's just these are ideas that are being floated at the moment, is if we all have 10 or 20 people in hospital that are ready to be discharged. So there's all sorts of reasons why people don't, as soon as they're well enough, can't get out into other accommodation. But they don't need the high technology, high intensity services of an acute hospital. And if we all have that issue, and we have that, and Oxford has that, and Buckinghamshire have that, could we build something that's less expensive, take some of that pressure off for the whole system? Means that could mean a smaller hospital, but more acute, but takes that pressure off other hospitals, and is more appropriate for those patients who are in there, because the environment is much more tailored to that type of requirement. That's one, and in other parts of the country they're looking at that as well. So, and what can we do as well in terms of our digital and our community resources to support people to be looked after more at home, if that's possible. So there's all sorts of new care models, but we are looking at that, and we have to look at that and how we connect with the wider system to understand what's the size of the hospital that we should be building. Now, it could mean that if we do that and we reduce the size of the hospital that we need, so it's not the same as what we need now, it could be possible that it remains on the site that we have, pending other issues being okay. So that's why it's all a little bit, we're doing more exploratory work, but I think it feels like the Hospital 2.0 approach is giving us more options than we thought we had. And so and previously we didn't want to explore because we just thought we don't know if we're going to get funded for it. So So that's where we are. I think that's my last slide. Yes, it's my last slide. So I'm going to stop there before I die coughing. I can see there's 13 comments in the chat. So Lynn, would you mind reading them out, or any questions that I need to answer there? I can grab a drink.
No problem. I'm going to go in order. So Sarah says, did Liverpool need an increase in nursing staff to cover the change in estate and lack of immediate visibility of patients? Yeah,
so well, if you talk about lack of visibility, there's different ways of getting visibility of patients rather than and they've talked about different they've helped with designing where you've got smaller hubs of rooms. So if you've got a couple of two rooms and 2 rooms and a couple of nurses, rather than one centralized nursing station to cover a huge amount of rooms, you can actually cluster them. So it's really difficult to get your head around, because there's some really different models and different positioning of wards. So it's not necessarily a ward, but it's single rooms, but actually the way that they're positioned could be different. Yes, they did have more staff. They have had more nursing staff. I wouldn't want to be quoted on how much, because I'm not 100% certain, but there's definitely more nursing staff, which is interesting, isn't it? Because people think that digital, you'll have a reduction in staff, but they had more staff. I think it's still, in terms of the business case, stacking up. So if you add up the amount of days lost in the amount of days lost in hospital infections, people getting infections once they get into hospital and having to stay 4, 5, 6, maybe more days longer in hospital, and you add that up over the year, including the times when people are now spending less time in hospital because they're recovering quicker, I'm pretty sure it's going to stack up. But the new hospital programme are investing in some research to do evaluation on those figures, so that we can learn from that. So there's a couple of universities now working on those aspects to make sure that we've got those figures. But yeah, more nursing staff, but it looks like better patient outcomes so far.
Great. Next question. Will there be a hydrotherapy pool in the new facility?
There's no plans for a hydrotherapy pool in the new facility. I think that I don't know. I won't say I'm an expert on this, but when the hydrotherapy pool was built, I don't think there were facilities that there are now available in the community to support some people who need that facility. But we certainly don't have plans now for a hydrotherapy pool in the new hospital.
Marcus has said, will scientific and technical support services be considered specifically for our build, or will we just take what the standard design says?
Well, we've got chance to input into the standard design. So it's interesting. I think I've seen on LinkedIn, the new hospital programme have a page on LinkedIn and give some updates on that. And they generally give updates on staff. And I've sort of remember seeing last week somebody for equipment, I think, or who's leading on equipment. Now, what will happen when this announcement happens, it will be a real, there'll be a real opening up of what's been going on, because they've been working and developing it with people across the country in working groups. But it's really hard that as they're developing it, not to involve everybody, because they may not have had the money. They may not have made their case, and then they'd have excited everybody and raised expectations, and then be told, actually, it's not going any further. So they've been developing this with working groups and expertise across the country. But once this announcement's made, they'll be opening up those groups and saying, right, now we've done certain elements of the standardized bit, but we need to do all of these other things, and we need your help to do it. And so there'll be a real call on people to help to input into that. Once it's sort of all out in the open. So which I think is quite exciting. So yeah, there's going to be loads of opportunity. We won't be just taking the standardized design at the moment, because that needs to be developed and we've got a chance to influence that.
There was a sort of follow-up question as well to that, saying there must be some allowance for specific specialisms in each hospital. So I think that you've kind of covered that in terms of.
Yeah. Who's that? Is that Marcus?
No, it was a follow-up by PJL on Marcus's question.
Okay. Yeah, I'd want to understand a bit more about that. Probably can't get into a discussion here, but yeah, I mean, we'd have to take into account different specialties in the standardization. So there'd have to be a menu, I guess, of it for this specialty. We've got these choices. I don't see that any specialty or configuration will have one choice. I think there'll be a few choices, but it will be a lot less. So at the moment, they were talking about in one of the cohort 2 hospitals, they were telling us that there were like 27,000 or 29,000 types of doors that they had to choose from. I mean, they've got it now down to 700, but that's still too many. You know, let's all agree on a really decent door that we can. I mean, who's got the headspace to be thinking about all the different types of doors? But that of course, those are going to be out there because we're all choosing from different menus. So I think the standardization will obviously limit the choice, but we won't have just one choice, because there is a recognition that hospitals, you know, there'll be some hospitals only have land and it's long, you know, and it's got certain size, and some hospitals will have, you know, be building up. It'll have to be adapted to certain builds, absolutely.
We'll give your voice just a break for a moment because Deborah's got her hand up. So let's let Deborah speak for a minute and you can have a sip of water.
Great.
Deborah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to raise a point over the question of the hydrotherapy pool. I'm a trustee of a local arthritis charity, and I have to say that the loss of the hydrotherapy pool at the RBH has been disastrous, quite frankly. And people's health is deteriorating because of it. And what I would take issue with is your comment that there are alternatives around in the town that weren't there when the hydro pool was built. Well, having searched the town and its surroundings during campaigning for the hydro pool, there are virtually no hydrotherapy pools which people can use. And we were one of at least half a dozen charities that used the hydro pool and paid the hospital for using it. And all their members have suffered because of the loss of it. There is nowhere that doesn't cost a fortune. I mean, there are spas and health clubs, but those are beyond the reach of a lot of people. I mean, sort of, some of them are £50 a session, or some of the annual subscriptions for something that people can afford to maintain their health, or indeed rehabilitate after operations or get ready for operations. If you want to get people out of hospital quicker, then use a hydro pool like they used to use it when it was first built at Battle to get people really strong. That would take the pressure off, take some of the pressure off needing the step-down facilities to get people back home and in good health. Please don't just dismiss the hydro pool and say there's lots of pools around. A swimming pool, a leisure pool isn't a hydro pool. It's a big difference, and it makes a big difference to people who are using it. Thank you.
Okay. I understood that, and certainly I know Reading in particular, and it's not, but Reading in particular are building more pools. So I just wonder, when in building those, is the consideration been taken into creating space or sessions or the right environment for some of that activity to happen? Do you know?
Well, unfortunately, although the whole of the Reading Council voted in favour of supporting a hydro pool at the RBH, there's been no mention and no communication between the Royal Berks and the council with the idea of building a hydrotherapy pool in one or other of these two facilities. It would be great if they did, but it's very difficult for the public to actually suggest it. It needs somebody within both of these organisations to put a foot forward from their position of supporting the idea of a hydrotherapy pool to actually making it happen. It's a shame because, as you say, we're building 2 pools. We have a diving pool, a children's pool, a swimming pool, but no hydrotherapy pool, which really would be great if they did it. And they can be made to be financially viable. There are places elsewhere in the country that have made both private and hospital hydrotherapy pools financially viable. It just needs the will to do it.
Sorry, can I be cheeky, and would you mind sending sending me that information about where it's been made to be viable? I haven't got any of that and seen any of that. Have you sent it to someone in the Royal Berks or?
No, but I mean, we did make the case to the Royal Berks when we were campaigning for it. I can certainly, assuming they're still open, but yeah, I can dig out, I think, the information that it's still viable. I will send it to you. Yes. Okay,
that would be helpful. If there's evidence out there, then we should be looking at it. You know, I think the campaigning. When were you campaigning for that?
I think it was 2015. It was when the RBH. It was when just as Steve McManus came in, and it was mooted to close the hydrotherapy pool down, and we started a campaign to keep it. And indeed, having looked at all the non-available hydrotherapy pools in the area, we had an agreement that they would continue the hydrotherapy pool for the foreseeable future until a pool of similar facility was available. Unfortunately, COVID would have stopped that, and the CCG decision also affected the viability, which was a real shame. But yeah, they can be made to be financially viable, or indeed with assistance from something like the RBH charity. There are financial ways of making this work, and it does make such a huge difference to people's maintenance, to keep them independent, keep them mobile, but also, as I say, for rehabilitation and preparing for ops. So yes, I will do that.
Yeah, that would be great if you, because I can, and also we can add some of these questions. So as they come up and we look into it, we can add it to our frequently asked questions, so that people know what it is. So what we're trying to do as well is, and we've had some events over the last few months, is people have asked questions. We've gone away and we, you know, some is related to the hospital and hospital of the future. Some are related to things now that we're happy to take to the right department and provide people with a response to. So we've been writing that up, and the people who've attended events will be getting an event summary where questions were raised, and posting that on our website. So we can add the, you know, questions that come up here, we'll be doing the same with, and let you have a response to that. So I'm no expert on the hydrotherapy pool, but I will find out a bit more about what this position is. But if there's evidence to say, you know, around that, then I'm, you know, happy to add that in and get it reviewed with the rest of the evidence as part of that business case process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. There was Mark said
hands up.
There's what, sorry?
Hands up. There's some people with hands up. Sorry to interrupt you, but
I can't see any hands up. Not
visual, not virtual hands, but
sorry, actual hands.
Actual. So CBATHO.
Yes, I'd just like to support what Deborah's just been saying, because without going into details, I've got complex musculoskeletal issues and I need to be swimming to support my conditions, right? And I've currently been looking into what the options are in the community to go swimming, and it's actually getting very expensive and very complicated. You've got the option of the health clubs, which is expensive, but you've got the logistics of getting there and getting back If you don't have your own transport, that adds to the cost, especially if the health clubs are not on a direct bus route. Also, with the local authority pools, there's very limited options to actually do strict adult lane swimming. A lot of the timetable is blocked out for things like obviously the kids learning from school, pool parties, all sorts of things. So there's actually very few options in the swimming timetable where you can do just strict adult lane swimming. You've got to book in advance, you've got to pay in advance. And if you want to cancel, you know, if your plans change for whatever reason, you have to give several hours notice in advance to cancel, otherwise you lose your money. And with the local authority pool, you've got 1 hour for your money, but it's not 1 hour in the pool, it's 1 hour from when you enter the building. So if you count the time that it takes to get changed, get in the pool, get changed and showered, everything afterwards, you don't have a lot of time. So it's, I'm very much supporting Deborah that we need hydrotherapy pools because the options in the community are not straightforward. They're expensive and they're complicated. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kate.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. With the other two, and it was me that raised it because I'm just in the process of going into the start of the hydrotherapy program because I've got severe epilepsy. So being in a pool on my own is not the best ideal of things for me to do. But because I've also got paralysis since the middle of the first lockdown of COVID, I'm using my mobility more than I should be. So I need to then relax it. But I've also found out that there's a place in Newbury Green and Business Park called Diamond Care, which offers a hydrotherapy, but along with the lines of the, you know, the bus routes and the times and everything else and the referrals. I also, I've got a friend that goes to one in Banbury, but because I can't get to Banbury because of the shutdown at Oxford between Didcot and Oxford because of the railway, it's then sort of infusing the fact that I need to then restrict my walking capacity, and bearing in mind I've got a numb foot to go with it as well as on double crutches. It sort of brings out the fact that if I'm being seen by a consultant in the RBH, why can't it be all done under one roof?
Yeah.
Because I've got enough hospitals to go to. And I think I calculated this morning, and I was telling someone else that I've got 21 clinics in May in a variety of hospitals, and I'm literally going to be sleeping on the bank holidays because that's what I'm going to need.
Gosh.
So yeah, it's mental. May is going to be absolutely mad. I'm having to then full cancel end of May's clinics for the RBH to then be put into June because I'm not going to be fully aware and awake because of the tiresome of me walking because my foot needs hydrotherapy. And in a way, it's for my upper body to relax because obviously with the drop seizures I have on crutches, which can be penalisingly painful, that actually I'm still recovering from a fractured shoulder from December's drop. And that actually hydrotherapy would help out a lot, but because I'm on crutches near enough 90% of the time, it's not getting the therapy that it needs. When the hydrotherapy would offer me that instantly.
Okay, so we definitely need to take away
absolutely
the hydrotherapy. So we can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got some other JB. Donna, sorry, I've just got initials on you.
Yeah, that's right. Julian Brooks. Hi, Alison. We have met. There was a question which I'd love to hear your latest view. Somebody asked about Green Park as a possible option. And if I remember rightly, you briefed me on that before, but for the benefit of everybody here, I'd be very interested in your current views on Green Park as a possible site.
At the moment, the evacuation zone has been increased. You know, the AWE, the evacuation zone from 1 kilometre from there to 3.5, I think. And that there are 3 or 4 sites near Green Park actually that affects in terms of our ability to build on there. So we were told, well, you could build on here if at the required time we could lock down for 48 hours should we need to in the hospital, and there were all these sort of conditions for a situation that, you know, okay, you know, highly unlikely to happen, but there is still a possibility could happen. And so we, you know, it was too risky to say yes, okay, go ahead and build on that. Now I know that at the minute that a lot of the property or the landowners there are contesting that, but that could take some time in challenging that. But the evacuation zone is a limiting factor. So Green Park at the moment is not on our shortlist. Lynn, any other hands? There's 2 or 3.
We've still got some questions on the chat if you want to quickly go through those. Mark said he hopes the new site has got sufficient parking for staff who will be coming and going at all hours, and sufficient provision for patients either by parking or shuttle bus services like Oxford. And then there's quite a bit of discussion about sort of public transport for sustainability, and those with mobility issues and some with neurodiverse might find it difficult to use public transport, so making sure that there's an allowance for those patients. So yeah, parking's always comes up, doesn't it, Ali? Every meeting.
we've done recently. We've done a survey, and 3,700 people responded. I'm pretty confident in saying the top thing that is annoying and frustrating people is parking. We've done a lot over the last few months to try and ease the congestion there. So move staff. Created 3,000 spaces off-site for staff. We've created a park and ride in 2 places, and patients can use that as well. So Thames Valley and Mere Oak, and free bus to and from the centre of town to the hospital for staff. So there's been a load of the cycle village, a load of things that we've put in place to try and relieve the pressure on the spaces that are there for parking. It's taken some of that pressure off, but you know, sometimes there's still days where I see it's still quite busy. So if we haven't created extra spaces, but if I describe it as, you know, where previously you might have 5 people vying for 1 space, you probably now have two people or 3 people vying for it. So it's taken some of the pressure off, but yeah, it's a huge issue. So yeah, a new site could really help with that. So a new site would give us an opportunity to have more parking. Yeah, because despite wanting, you know, greener transport, and you know, we know that that's not going to change anytime soon. So we do need to improve on our parking.
And then just can see we're over time, so just a couple more questions. I think there's 2. Emma said she's currently working on the Royal Bath Hospital, and it would be her opinion that building new in lieu of the refurbished on existing land would be easier. They've also had money from outside sources, business, which could be an option to add to the funding. So not necessarily a question as such, but interesting, and we have talked about potentially other sources of funding before, haven't we? As for specific things.
And you know, we're looking at how do we build our clinical research facilities and our training facilities, and you know, we may well have to buddy up with or get investment elsewhere to help us with some of that, because the new hospital programme will be funding, you know, primarily it will be clinical space.
And then just the final one, I think, E. Tyler had put, is the location decision primarily financial? Thames Valley Park would make more sense because it would still serve the South Oxfordshire area.
Is it primarily financial? that's a tricky one. I mean, definitely finances are going to be a strong factor, but you know, we're not. If we find somewhere cheap that is difficult for people to get to, not that anywhere's cheap, but if you find somewhere that low cost with that is difficult for our patients to get to, we won't be going to it, because it's more important. So some things are more important than the cost, and so we have to weigh those factors up. So, you know, absolute access is top priority when it comes to where we put it, and access for not just patients, but actually staff. You know, if we have to move from where we are now, we currently have 6,000 staff that work for us. You know, some of those staff will have decided to work for us because they live nearby, they can drop the kids off on the way to school, or you know, all these other factors that make it easy for people to work, and it won't be that easy for people to move. So we have to consider the staff as well as patients whenever we're moving. There's a whole load of factors in terms of moving that we have to think about.
Sorry, I missed Bob's question. He said, is the sale of the current central site required to fund building a new hospital at a different site, or will the current central site remain as a satellite unit of Royal Berkshire?
So both options are being explored. Yeah, so but both options are being explored. So it's there's a huge amount of cost. I didn't even realise in clearing a site. So our site needs to be decontaminated and, you know, demolished potentially. Now we could sell it to somebody who would do all that for us, but you know, that is tens of millions to do that exercise, to clear that ready. So we would need an investor who would be prepared to do all of that work in order to do that. Or if we did it, that would come out of the cost of any profit that we would make. So a lot of people think, oh, it's right in this, you know, it's in the central location, it's, you know, a good piece of land, it's, you know, must be worth a lot of money. When you tot up all the work that has to be done to make it good, it's not as much as people think. So we're not relying on any sale to move us to a different site. It will contribute, but it's not, we're not relying on it. And because of all those issues, should we then therefore think about using that site as some kind of satellite site? Could it be used for a health and wellbeing hub? You know, a big holding multiple different services on that site. So we'll explore those options about what makes good sense and good value for money on that site, should we move. I know I've held you all up now. Probably all my faffing with technology and what have you, I've eaten into time, but it's 10 past. So if people have any questions, you can always email us. There's also a phone number on the website that Lynn keeps. It's very loud. So, there's a phone number if people don't like to use email, so you can call us. I look forward to the information on the hydrotherapy pool, and we will get up any. We have frequently asked questions and things and responses that we put on our website as well. Any more for any more? No. Right.
No,
well, I'll wrap it up.
The next online update is Monday, the 22nd of May at 6 o'clock. So we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.